If you are a regular watcher of football, no doubt you have noticed that usually very few goals are scored in the first half of matches. Most professional sports gamblers and traders will often split their bet and trade strategies between the first and second half periods. Historically, statistics show that teams are more likely to start a game solidly with the intent being to avoid conceding an early goal. This is especially true of underdog teams. That said, however, there isn't that much of a gap between first half and second half goals as you might have thought. For example, typically the English Premier League sees around 45% of goals being scored in the first half. Overall, 67% of games saw at least one goal scored in the first half and 25% had two or more goals in the first half. As we go into the strategies, give consideration to the following statistics as they relate to football scoring rates, and how they influence the markets. Just knowing this, and applying that knowledge will put you on par with many professional gamblers and sports traders. In 78% of football matches, the final score will end with at least 2 goals, that is over 1.5 goals scored. On average, 1 goal is scored in the first half. On average, a little under 2 more goals are scored in the second half. Most first half goals will come between the 15 to 45 minutes. What you should consider when betting and trading the first period of matches. Some teams keep it tight at the back. For example, Brighton have a reputation for being solid in defense when away from home, conceding just 1 goal conceded in the first 15 minutes last season. This defensive approach also meant they didn't score any goals either. Low-scoring away teams will clearly influence the likelihood of a low-scoring first half. The last 15 minutes of either half. During the English Premier League 2019 to 2020 season, 19% of all first-half goals were scored after the 31st minute. Only the last 15 minutes of the second half saw more goals. This is partly due to weaker teams being tired, but also in part because the time added on past the regular 90. This trend is not unique to English football either. The percentages may vary slightly, but in general terms strong teams score more goals after 31st or 76th minutes of the two halves. Here are some first half betting and trading strategies. I can't stress this enough. As always, for any strategy you plan to use, always do your due diligence and wherever possible paper trade a few matches before you start betting or trading for real. Paper trading helps you gain experience when using a new system, without the risk of losing your hard-earned gains. It also helps build your confidence once you understand the systems. This table shows the percentage of matches where at least 1 goal has been scored in either of the two halves. That means under 25% of matches end in a 0-0 draw. Strategy: the under or overs first goal markets. First half under or over markets. Selection under 2.5 goals. If your analysis leads you to conclude that a match is likely to have a slow start, or that both teams will be cautious, you can bet on the first half goals being under 2.5 goals. Trade the over or under 2.5 match goals market if you prefer to trade, that is lay, the same scenario, because you determine that a match is likely to have a slow start, or you think both teams will be cautious, you can back under 2.5 match goals with the intent to trade out in play. Depending on the match and the liquidity of the market, it is also possible to leave a trade within 15 to 20 minutes of the kickoff with an okay profit, just so long as no goals have been scored. Here's a typical bet exchange chart, where you can see the under 2.5 match goals was priced at 4.1 just before kickoff. Using various online research sites, we concluded that the match would be under 3.5 goals. Here's an example of the research available. By backing at the higher price, expecting there to be few goals early on, which will mean the price will drop as the first half progresses. As the odds fall, you are able to lay the under 2.5 goals market with a lower liability, which will turn your trade green and lock in a tidy profit. If possible, it's best to stagger your lay or exit trades, so that you lock in more profit. Remember, if a goal is scored in the under 2.5 goals market, the odds will go up. As you can see in this match, at 24 minutes, there's already the opportunity to trade out. As well as the lay odds, you need to watch for the liquidity in the markets too, so always try to max out your trades as you go along. Strategy: can you hold out for 15 minutes? Regardless of how dominant a team may look on paper, it's always a good strategy to follow the first 15 minutes of a match, just to get an idea of how the teams are performing. With practice, you'll learn how to read the game and be able to tell if the favorite is on top or if the underdog is offering a genuine threat. Another reason for waiting is to see if there's any liquidity or movement in the market to justify trading. Also, before kickoff it's a good idea to check if there are wholesale changes to either team. Following these simple steps will add extra value on the first half goal markets by leaving your entry later in the match. Here's an MBTSports pro tip. Split your stake with half placed around 15 to 20 minutes, assuming the match play looks positive, and the rest of the stake at around 35 minutes. Strategy: back the favorite for a half-time lead after 15 minutes. You usually have a fair idea of what is likely to happen in a game. If you don't, it probably isn't a good first half trading option. If the favorite team is hogging possession and clearly in the ascendancy, you should look to back them to be leading at half-time. If they score before the 30th minute, you should be able to earn a decent return by cashing out. If not, you can decide whether you want to keep the trade open and back them all the way to half-time, or cashing out for a relatively small profit or loss. Strategy: back the half-time upset. What you'll find in football is that the underdog team rarely wins over the 90 minutes, but will often start quite lively and can cause real upsets in the first half. While watching the match, if you see that the favorite is struggling, or the longer odds team, the underdog, is being adventurous, you might feel that the underdog could be leading by half-time. When you see this playing out, and you decide to back them, you should be able to get a good price, and if they do score, you can cash out immediately. Another way to play this same scenario is to follow the game, and if the underdog takes the lead you can then enter the market with either a lay on the underdog or back the pre-match favorite to come back and win. Strategy: the late breakthrough. It can sometimes take the favorite longer than expected to get up to speed in a match. That said, though, they are usually on top after 30 minutes of the first half. As we've said before, strong teams, those in the top 6 places in the league, tend to score a lot of goals in the later stages of a half. Weaker sides are also susceptible to conceding a late goal in the first half, usually due to loss of stamina or a lapse in concentration. For example, at the time of making this, last season, Bournemouth conceded 18 goals in the final 15 minutes of the first half during the season. This contributed to them being relegated from the English Premier League. Strategy: half-time goals. This is a much easier system. You just have to back over or under goals at half-time. If your research means you are expecting an early goal, it's best to wait a few minutes if you fancy goals. For example, only 11% of goals scored in the English Premier League last season occurred during the first 15 minutes of the match. If you are new to trading or are still learning your system, it's always worth watching those matches that have significant liquidity, just to see how quickly the market moves in the first few minutes. By doing this you can learn when is potentially a good time to enter the market. A word or two on first half betting and trading. Here's just a few words of warning, some things you should be aware of and watch out for when trading first half matches. First goal in the first half. Statistically, 30% of matches will have the first goal scored during the first 15 minutes of the first half. This 15-minute block is the most predominant scoring period of any of the other 15-minute blocks. You should always take this into account when considering your first half trades. There are many sites where you can find this information match by match. Many professional traders who are considering the first half overs market will often wait a few minutes, just to see how the match starts, and will take a look at getting decent odds on over 1.5 half-time goals. Less time to trade out of a losing position. One downside with first half betting and trading is that if something goes wrong, there is much less time to recover. Some markets should be traded with caution. For example, if you back a half-time 0-0 scoreline, and a goal is scored, you will lose your full stake. Similarly, if you bet on the favorite to lead at half-time but they go behind to the underdog, you might struggle to trade out in time to minimize any loss.